Mrs. Viola, welcome to Rudaw.
Thank you very much for having me.
So you have started working on 28th of August. Tell me your work, how is it so far?
Well, so far I think there's a big challenge ahead of us. There are big expectations from the Iraqi side, from different sides in Iraq, from the executive, the government, the protest movement, the young generation, human rights defenders. So everyone wants to have a strong and a committed European election observation mission, which is good. But on the other hand, of course, it is a huge task ahead of us to cover the entire country. We have 12 people in the core team, 12 experts, 4 different sections: media, data, social media, legal parties. So all the different fields will be covered and are covered by our experts. The long-term observers have arrived at the beginning of September. They will be deployed tomorrow in the field. We will work from 3 hubs from Basra, Baghdad and ERBIL. So far everything looks fine, everything is in time, and hope that everything stays peaceful and calm as well.
We are several weeks away from the election day and you already started working. What are you doing now? What's your team doing now?
Well, our team tries to get the good overview of the entire situation. What kind of parties do we have? What kind of candidates? What is the impression of the different political representatives? How is the access to media? How is the relation towards voters, citizens? Is there intimidation? Is there voters buying going on? All these different categories they are looking very carefully at and make already first documentation, try to get as many information from your people, from the Iraqi people, from the institutions here. And now we will hopefully, with the long-term observers, get more and more information. So observation does not mean you come at the election day. Observation for us in the European Union means you have a certain methodology on which the final assessment, the overall assessment, is based on.
So will you have a daily or weekly report sending to EU about the situation, the process, or is it a final report you will publish it at the end?
We have like 3 stages. We have a briefing package for the long-term observers who have arrived. There are already a couple of information based on what the core team has found during the first weeks. The next step is, of course, that everyone now contributes to the so-called preliminary statement, which I will, 48 hours after election day, present at the press conference. And then we will have a more conclusive and more binding or more committed statement after 2 months. This is then with all the tabulation, calculation going on, maybe with legal challenges in the post-electoral period. So after 2 months of the election day, I will return, present this final report, talk to all the politicians, executive, government, but also to NGOs, civil society and so on, and then we will ask them to implement our recommendations.
So while taking these notes, can you interfere, like if you see mistake or you have a suggestion or you have a recommendation to the government, to the commission, to the observers, local observers, can you just suggest or you're not allowed?
No, we have not the mandate to assist or to interfere, not at all. We analyze, we document, we speak to people, we try to get as much information, we put everything on paper, but it's not our role to advise, to consult, to interfere, to make suggestions. This is not part of our mandate. Our part of the mandate is really purely observation, what we see, what we receive, oral information, written information, photos and so on, but nothing that we interact in a more, let's say, active way or offensive way with anybody in this country.
Okay. How many observers do you have around Iraq, and how are they distributed on the areas?
For now, it is the core team of 12 people here, myself, plus 20 long-term observers. They will be deployed at the end of this week in the regions. We will have, as far as I know, we have 10 teams. I think 2 go to Basra, a couple go to ERBIL, some will stay here and cover the center and some other provinces from Baghdad on. And we will be probably having 45 short-term observers on the election day. They will be composed by the different EU missions, plus Norway and Canada. And there will be also a delegation from the European Parliament with 7 of my colleagues from the European Parliament and the advisors. So altogether we will be around 80.
The member of parliaments are also observers?
Yes.
Their role?
Yes, yes. They are from different parties. They are from all parties which are represented in the European Parliament. And it looks that they are also a very strong team, and they're very much looking forward to also get the experience on the ground. So
as a sum, I think the number of observers will be like around 80 observers.
Yes, that's
for all Iraq. So Iraq has more than thousands of polling stations.
55.
Yeah. So I want to know how will you make assessment to this big country with this number of observers?
Yes, as I said, I mean, we have the long-term observers. We have, of course, contacts to many local experts, local people who provide us with information. It is not our task on the election day to cover as many polling stations as we can. It is rather the task and the goal of the mission to have a long-term perspective. That's why we came early, and that's why we stay even 2 months after the election day. So that is more important than having a huge number at the election day and to tick the box.
And you'll take notes from voters, political parties, locals, right?
We take notes from everything what's going on, what's happening, from, let's say, multiplicators, from different NGOs, from local observers. Of course, we're very much in exchange with them. I mean, if for example, legal challenges, appeals will come up, we will take note of that. We go into this kind of claims, of course, but it will be very interesting who then finally comes up with what kind of, I mean, information or claims or challenges. But for now, we try to get the information from the respective, let's say, competent people who have also a good overview of the country.
So can you tell us about your team notes so far, or does it remain secret until the end of the election and 2 months after the election?
It would be simply too early. It's not up to me now to disclose our findings at this stage when we're still 4 weeks ahead of the election. So this is, first of all, it would be much too early to make any assessment. And second of all, it would, of course, could be seen as interference in the election, and therefore I would be very much reluctant to do so.
Okay. Have you done an inspection on electronic system or other equipments of the elections?
This will happen, of course, but we have spoken to the representatives of the EHAC many times, and I think that some people have already visited and seen how the technical equipment finally works. But also there, I would not make any, assessment at that moment. I know that there are concerns or suspects that things might go in terms of cyber and different, let's say, interference. But as I said, I would be cautious to give you any proofs or indication for that at that
Only
moment.
for media or for them also, for the commission members also?
No, we are not. I mean, we're just observing. It's not, at that point, we do not publish anything to nobody.
So, while you cannot interfere, you cannot talk about your recommendation or suggestion, can you tell me what's your purpose or aim for this observation?
Absolutely.
Like, what's good for?
First of all, what we would like to see is confidence building in the institution. Since the government of Iraq has requested this mission, they obviously have an interest that their institution will be strengthened by, let's say, integer and transparent, fair and free elections. So it is our job to justify this or not in a, let's say, very differentiated way. Second of all, of course, the international community has a huge interest in our findings and our evaluation. So for the domestic audience, for you, for the citizens, for the media, for the government, it is interesting to see, compared to international standard, where are we? Yeah. So what is the, let's say, level of our elections? But second of all, the international community is very keen to get a proper assessment. Where does the democratic elections in Iraq stand? So this is, and that's why it is so interesting to have the final report, to distribute the final report, and to get reactions also from different international partners.
These international standards, what are they?
Well, I mean, all. It is the capitals of Europe, people in different international institutions, the IMF, I mean, you name it. Different international institutions would like to know what is the status quo of the election or democratic election, or the standard of the democratic election in Iraq. And that's more than fair. I mean, we see that's now 18 years of democracy, or the way towards democracy, and people become more and more impatient. They lose the trust in the institution. There's still not, we will see, hopefully, that it will be a high turnout, because what we would like to see is, of course, people participating in this election, taking ownership for these elections. Yeah? And this will be interesting, whether there is, let's say, an upright tendency and an upgrade towards the last elections or not.
As a long-term observer, as a politician, do you feel that, you talked about how people feel depressed, they lose the trust. So I want to know, do you think that there is a reluctance, or people are not participating in this campaign, or saying that we are not voting? What do you say about this?
Well, we face very soon federal elections in Germany.
Yes.
And when I leave Iraq, I will, of course, also campaign in Germany. And we have many people who have the same question. Why should I go voting? What is the reason? There's a lot of disappointment. Even in Germany, many people refrain from vote. And I can only tell them, please be active and show your political will. Try to find a candidate who suits you, a party who suits you, because the more people will abstain and will not participate, the bigger and the louder the voice of the more, let's say, radical voices are. So no matter how frustrated you are, and no matter how dissatisfied you are, you should really think twice before you stay home. This would be my advice. Of course, the expectations are very high, and of course, this expectation will be difficult to meet. But nevertheless, with the support of the people, the Iraqi people, with the will to change something, I hope we together at least can do little steps forward. Yeah.
After the voting day and 2 months, I think, you will get your report ready. How will you publish it? Will you hand over to like parties, the governments, the elected parliament?
Yes, we will come back to the country. We will have meetings with all the representative parties in the parliament, with the government, with the NGOs, with media, and we'll present our findings and hopefully and also present the recommendations, the package of recommendations, and hopefully they will be taken on board from the new government, from, let's say, commissions in the parliament and other decision makers in Iraq. But of course, we have no executive right. This is up to... No, we cannot enforce. We can only recommend, we can ask, we can call, we can speak to people, try to explain, and of course we would like to see a following up. So once we have had finished the election observation mission, presenting and publishing the final report, of course it needs a following up, and this is also a question whether this is done through our embassies or some more advisors, we will see. But at that point, what you ask, yes, we will publish and talk to the main political parties and the government.
Assisting Iraq by EU, is it conditioned upon having a good election process?
Well, I know, I mean, a condition, it is difficult to say at this stage. Everyone in the European Union wishes Iraq success. Economic success, democratic success, and wishes the people of Iraq to finally have more trust in the institution, to see a higher social standard in this country, to see things are working. And fair and free elections are one precondition to a more democratic statehood or more democratic institution as such. And of course, people in the European Union are really hoping this will be possible this time. Yes, whether this will be a precondition, this is not up to me to decide this.
Assistant U.S. Secretary of State of United States, Joey Hood, told Rudaw that his country supports EU's mission for election to Iraq. So what's...
No, this is a misunderstanding.
Okay.
The US does not support the EU mission. The US supports the monitoring mission. I know in Arabic it is the same word, monitoring, observing.
Yes.
But the UN has a different mandate, has a different mission, and we, from the European Union, will not receive money and no support from the US. These are two different mandates, two different...
Do you have coordination in working here in Iraq?
We speak, yes. We try not to duplicate our work, yes. But otherwise we are completely independent. We do not depend on each other. We do not finance each other. So this is a different task. We observe and they monitor, and they also assist, and they also, of course, are much more involved in the technical equipment, technical consultation with the government.
And how will you monitor the election technically or logistically? Like, will you be able to move between polling stations?
Yeah, hopefully.
What's your plan for that day?
No, of course we will move. Normally, there is ahead of the elections, we look very carefully at the map, at different polling stations, where to go. But of course, we will not speak about that in public.
I understand. But will you take like complaints from voters or political parties at the day of election, like if they report an issue in one in one polling station?
We take, we have like as I said, we have a different form, and if there are complaints, we have a certain form, we fill in all the complaints, and this goes all into our statistics, yes.
There are major concerns in dispute or conflict areas on how the election process runs, namely Kirkuk, Diyala, Salahuddin, and Nainawa. Do you plan to send more observers to those areas?
Well, really very much depends on the security situation. We have experts who work on the security situation. It is also very difficult at that moment to say which groups will be deployed. Also, the diplomatic observers might be more flexible than others. So for me, at that point, it is very difficult to say where you find which observers, which team. So we try to cover as much as we can.
But do you notice and know these concerns?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, Mohammed Tawfiq Alawi, an Iraqi politician and former candidate for the position of Iraqi Prime Minister, told Rudaw that the election fraud happens within the commission, electoral commission. So, are you also monitoring the works of commission?
We take note of all the complaints we are getting. So far, we have not have an official complaint about what kind of indication or proof they are. But if they would address those complaints to us, of course we take note of this. Yes.
Allowing journalists to work without strains in the election day, on the voting day, and during the campaigning of the election, wouldn't that make your work easier?
You mean media?
Journalists and media outlets, if they work without restrictions,
yes,
without
of course.
Challenges?
Yes, of course. This is a huge, but this is not during the election day. I mean, to work independently in a country such as Iraq, it is always extremely difficult, not just around the election day, before and after. So I think it is up to the Iraqi security and forces to make sure that the security and the safety of each and every journalist will be guaranteed. But of course, it is much easier if we have independent media, if we have independent information, yes. But we will take what we get. Otherwise, it's social media, different groups where we look into WhatsApp groups, Facebook groups, and so on. So we follow the debate very closely.
How do you monitor the process in Kurdistan region? Is it different from Iraq? Other areas in Iraq?
No. We try. I mean, we apply the same methodology. We have long-term observers there. We will have short-term observers. I will go there tonight. So in general, we treat them all equally.
Do you take appeals and complaints from candidates or political parties after the election day? Will you take it?
No, we don't take. I mean, of course, when there are official complaints, when there are official appeal, we document them, we take note of them, and of course, if there is a certain and significant number with very similar complaints, very, let's say, striking a number of complaints, this will be all then put in the report, and that makes a certain, let's say, assessment in the end. But we are not the referee, we are not the judges, we are not the appeal court. From us, it can be not expected that we solve that, these questions in the country here.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot for having us.